What's up, everybody? I know it's been a while, but I am back doing something that I like to do each year, and that is going division by division and breaking down each one. I'm not going to go so far as to pick records for each team, but I'll tell you how I think the division is going to stack up. However many playoff teams, that's just a guess because I'm not going game by game like I have in the past, because who's got time for that? But I want to start with the AFC East. And this one's pretty simple to me. This has been Buffalo's division ever since Tom Brady went to Tampa. And I think that Buffalo is going to win this pretty easily. Looking at strength of schedule, it's actually quite interesting that the first AFC team that appears in terms of strength of schedule is number 9, which is the Baltimore Ravens. The first 8 teams in terms of the toughest schedules are in the NFC, and Buffalo does not appear on until 23. They have a combined opponents record of 135 and 154 from a year ago, giving them the 23rd toughest schedule. And so there's no reason for me to think anything other than the Bills continuing to dominate the AFC East. Now, I do want to look at a couple of their additions. The most significantly, although it doesn't change much, is that reigning MVP Josh Allen agreed to terms on a 6-year deal worth $330 million, but the Bills also added Elijah Moore and Josh Palmer. And then on the defensive side, the big notable addition is Joey Bosa. So that really bolsters that defense. Hopefully this gives Buffalo a more rounded attack to possibly take down the Kansas City Chiefs, Baltimore Ravens, the usual teams that are there at the end in the AFC. I don't expect anything different than Buffalo continuing to dominate this division. Second place, it might come as a surprise to some. I have the New England Patriots, and I think there is a slight chance, extremely slight, that this team could be the surprise and find themselves in the wild card, but I don't think that's likely. I think the AFC East is a one playoff team division, but it would not surprise me if the New England Patriots found their way in with the first year of head coach Mike Vrabel. Seems like a perfect fit. I said that a year ago with Gerard Mayo. That didn't work out. I found that to be a little unfair. But it is what it is. What are you going to do? They had a ton of additions that are actually really fun to me. They brought in Stephon Diggs. They brought in Mac Hollins. They brought in Austin Hooper to give more targets for Drake May, who had a very good rookie campaign for what he had to work with. And they also bolstered the defensive side of the ball with, and I'll just run through a few names here, Kavon Chason, Harold Landry, Milton Williams, Chris Tonga, Robert Spillane, Carlton Davis, Marcus Epps, Jalen Hawkins, to name a few. All these additions that were made by the Patriots. I don't expect this to be a 10-win team by any means, but if we're sitting here at the end of the season talking about a 9-8 team sneaking into the playoffs, it wouldn't surprise me if that team is the New England Patriots. I think that Mike Vrabel is going to attach a culture to this team that just makes them fun to watch. And it would not surprise me, although I do not think it likely, that the New England Patriots were a playoff team. Third in the division, I have the Miami Dolphins. Look, the Dolphins for the last couple of seasons have been one of the sexier picks to make the playoffs, to say, hey, this is a team that can put up 50 points easy, and that's true with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Of course, that's a possibility. And then you look at additions that were made in the offseason, and you have Alexander Madison at the running back position. The big one is Darren Waller coming out of retirement. He was acquired via a trade with the Giants after he came out of retirement. And on the defensive side of the ball, the Dolphins have brought in the likes of Willie Gay Jr., Kendall Sheffield, and most notably Minkah Fitzpatrick, acquired in a trade with the Steelers that I believe was the trade that involved, yes, it was the trade that involved Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith. So that's the big splash on defense for Miami. And this a team, look, would I be surprised if they found their way in the playoffs? Absolutely not. But between the injury history of Tua Tagovailoa, of Jalen Waddle, the fact that Tyreek Hill's getting older, he's still the fastest man in the league, but the fact that he's getting older, and Miami's just inability to do anything notable in the postseason. Plus, I think the AFC is so loaded that it's going to be near impossible for anybody not the Chiefs, Bills, or Ravens to come out of the AFC. I just don't see it. I think Miami had their window, and I think it's closing. And if something were to happen to Tua Tagovailoa, which, let's be honest, it's an extreme possibility, the Miami's backups are Zach Wilson or Quinn Ewers. So I personally don't see it in the cards for the Miami Dolphins this season. And last but not least, no surprise here, is the New York Jets. Their biggest news in the offseason is signing Justin Fields, but they also re-signed Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner to lucrative contracts. This is first year for Jets head coach Aaron Glenn, who spent the last several years as defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. And while the Detroit Lions have become the most popular coaching tree from which to pluck, with the likes of Ben Johnson going to Chicago, Aaron Glenn, I think, is he a good hire for the Jets? Yes. I think there's a possibility he could install a Dan Campbell-like mentality with this Jets team. But given the fact that it is the Jets, who we have just removed from a pretty embarrassing Aaron Rodgers tenure, and they haven't made any real significant changes to this roster and all the holes they still have, all the dysfunction they still have, I don't expect anything this season. 4 or 5 wins tops. And that is where I have the AFC East. I have the Bills running away with it, followed by the Patriots and Miami Dolphins, who both could mess around and find themselves in the playoffs. I'm not as big a believer in the Dolphins as I have been in the past, and I think the Patriots could surprise some people with all the moves they made in this offseason, but I don't really expect either team in the playoffs, but wouldn't surprise me. And the Jets rounding out the division, because that's what they do best. This has been my AFC East breakdown, and we'll be back with another video tomorrow where we will talk about the AFC North. I am Roman Gennaro for Empire Sports Talk, and until then, I'll see you around.